All right. Well, it didn't go live to the right address. Let me just fix that real quick. Just fix this real quick. Sorry for the technical hurdles. Oh, there you go. Ugh. Okay. We are good to go now at this time. So, here, welcome everybody to the slightly late, due to various technical difficulties and a slightly delayed dinner on my part, stream of The Shores of Tripoli, the new game from Fort Circle Games, with our guest designer, Kevin Bertram. How's it going, Kevin? I'm doing okay. So, I've been saying that this is the first game from Fort Circle. I am correct. Correct? Okay, and then you have at least two more games in the pipeline that I'm aware of coming, and I'll probably ask you to talk about those more toward the end. But in the meantime, we have The Shores of Tripoli, which is what came out a couple months ago, 2, 3 months ago.
Is when our main shipment here in the United States came. Global shipping being a little messy in these days. So it's a 2020 release, but exactly when it was released is a
Okay,
little up in the
and
air.
and just so you know, I have just turned your audio on. So another thing that if I'm making videos, it's set up differently, and I had your audio turned, system audio turned off. So sorry about that.
Well, I didn't say that much important, so it's okay.
It's all good. So yes, 2020 release, Shores of Tripoli. Everything looks great, and having looked at the physical components, I think a number of other people have been very pleased with the physical components. So why don't you give us a brief introduction to? I guess let's start with the historical topic first, because I would imagine that a lot of people, while they've heard the song, because it's mentioned in the Marines hymn, the shores, halls of Montezuma and the shores of Tripoli, they don't really know much about the Barbary Wars, and I certainly would fall into that category.
Sure. So the Barbary states, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Tristan, had been pirates for a long time. It's what their economy was based around, was piracy and tribute. And they were semi-vassal states in the Ottoman Empire, but they kind of did their own thing. And when the United States was part of, under England's control, we were left alone because we had the protection of the Royal Navy. They didn't, there was no issues there. Once we became our own country, we were easy pickings. We didn't have much of a navy. For a while, we didn't have almost any navy at all. And then the Navy, Congress authorized 6 frigates to be built, and we got in a little tussle with the French in what was called the Quasi War, and and then when Jefferson became president, he hated that we were either paying tribute or were suffering piracy, particularly in the Mediterranean, and so we sent what was called a squadron of observation, and they were going to, basically a show of force to encourage all the Barbary pirates to leave us alone. Unfortunately, we had been late with our tribute payment, so Tripoli declared war before our ships even got there. So the war kind of kicks off in 1801, and it was pretty inconclusive for the first couple of years. And then we hatched a plan to put the Basha's older brother on the throne. And so we went and found him in Alexandria and found him, he wasn't really ready to be take over his brother's spot in Tripoli, but we had a few forces with him. We took and captured Dern, and that's where the Shores of Tripoli comes from. It's the first city on the map, as you can see. And by that time, our blockade had increased in its capacity. And at that point, the Basha of Tripoli is like, fine, I'll sign your peace treaty. You don't have to pay tribute anymore. And that worked great until then the War of 1812 came along and he started raiding again. And then after the War of 1812 was done, pretty much all the European powers decided we're just going to put a stop to this. And then they really, after 1816, they were not really much of a power at all. And then Europeans started then colonizing shortly thereafter. And so this history just covers from the game lasts from 1801 to 1806. The actual conflict did end in the summer of 1805 when this peace treaty was signed. And so that's the history that it covers. It's important to the United States for a number of reasons. First is it's actually the first time we raised the American flag on foreign soil, which, kind of set the path of how we engaged in foreign policy. It certainly raised the esteem of our Navy and Marines within the wider world, although we were still, an upstart nation at the time. And so it was kind of a foundational war for the United States, although it was never a declared war. It was, but obviously, it's fundamental in our formation of our military service. So,
okay, great. So in that case, we can see that we have cards and we have little plastic boats, and we have cubes, which I take to mean I take to represent ground forces.
That's correct.
And then I noticed that the Tripolitanians, I will be playing the Tripolitanians for the purposes of our demonstration this evening, have both orange and red ships. What's the difference there?
Sure. So the red ships are Tripoli proper, and then Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia can come in on your side as allies, and those ships are orange.
Okay.
And historically, they really didn't do very much during this war. I think Morocco went out and captured one ship and then said, it was a big mistake. But they were always a threat, and that's why it's something on the U.S. Navy Commodore's mind the entire time.
Okay, so how do we start the game then?
All right, so I guess I should tell you what you can do on a turn.
Okay.
So the United States can do one of three things. They can play a card for the event. Some cards get removed from the game, some do not. The United States can discard a card to move 2 frigates, and they can be moved anywhere on the board. You see the light circles around some of the ports. Those are patrol zones that they stop Corsairs trying to go out. They make interception rolls. Or they can go and bombard the ground troops in Dern and Benghazi. So you can move. So you can discard a card to move 2 frigates, or you can discard a card to build a gunboat, and they look the same as your Corsairs, but they're blue, and they go in Malta, and in combat they're half as effective as a frigate.
Okay, and those are the little boats.
Yep.
Okay.
What you can do is you can play a card for an event. You can discard a card to raid from Tripoli, and when a raid occurs, your 4 Corsairs, or however many you have 4 there now, would pass through that patrol zone. If there are any ships there, they'd shoot at you. 2 dice would shoot. Every 6 would sink one of your Corsairs. And then the remaining Corsairs are out in the ocean, and on a 5 or a 6, they sink, or they capture a merchant ship, and they get a gold. And then they go back, and there's not a separate interception roll when they're returning home. And then the third thing you can do is discard a card to build a Corsair in Tripoli. So those are your 3 options, and then my 3 options. The game is already set up. I have 3 frigates in Gibraltar. You have 2 in Gibraltar, and they're not at war because that's a British port. They're not going to let us fight. But historically, what happened is we actually rolled into Gibraltar, and we didn't know we were at war, and there was some kind of James Bond action going on before we kind of figured out we even were at war with Tripoli. So. And then the other thing is we each need to draw 6 cards. So
there is a U.S. hand and a Tripolitanian hand buttons up at the top. So if we're drawing 6, I will draw 6.
Yep. And I should say the 3 that you see on the board already, those are called core cards. They don't count against your hand limit, and they can be played instead of a card from your hand.
Okay.
And they're just like, one's a card you want to play early, one's your commander-in-chief card, and then one's your big reinforcement card. So.
Okay.
All right. So I've drawn my 6 cards.
Okay. All right. And then who goes first?
So the United States goes first, and we'll play 4 rounds, just going back and forth. And after 4 rounds, the year is over.
Okay.
So the first card I'm going to play is Naval Movement. So I don't know if you can see it there.
Yes.
All right. So it allows me to move up to 4 frigates. Now I only have 3 on the board. So I'm going to, and I'm a little new at this, so I got to detach. And I'm going to move. How do I?
Double click on the stack.
Oh, okay. So I've moved 1 there. Oh, there we go. All right, so I'm moving 1. Actually, I want to move that 1 all the way over to here to Tripoli, and then the other 2 are going to be in this patrol zone. So it allows me to move up to 4, and I can move them anywhere on the board. So I moved 1 to that patrol zone of Tripoli and 2 in that patrol zone of Gibraltar. And so my turn is now complete.
Okay, so
do I have to...
Go ahead.
So now it's your turn. And so
Okay.
I just want to explain why I did that. I don't want you to get those. You have one of your core cards. It's called Murad Reyes Breaks Out. That's how you can get those 2 Corsairs home to Tripoli. And so I don't want you to do that. So I'll get to shoot with my frigates as you go by and hopefully knock them out. But I also don't want those Corsairs in Tripoli to go raiding. So I at least have 1 frigate there. Now I only get to shoot 2 dice and I hit on a 6. So it's not a huge disincentive to you, but it's, the best I can do with my limited forces at the beginning of the game.
Okay. So let's say I decide to raid.
Yes.
What am I raiding to? Am I going to a specific space or to
So-
a patrol zone?
So if you're playing with a physical game, it's nice to move the pieces out into the ocean, right under the open sea, anywhere in the Med. But because this is Vassal, I think that's probably not useful. So they'll just raid and come back, and you don't need to mark it anywhere on the board.
Okay, so it's abstract and not they're raiding in a specific location.
Right. And there's no the merchant ships are also abstracted out, right? You just assume there's targets there, and you'll roll. So you'll have to discard a card. You'll put it in your discard pile, and then if you were to raid, I would roll 2 dice for that frigate there, and then let's say I get 1 hit. Then the remaining 3 would roll, and for each 5 and 6, you'd get a gold. They'd return, and then we'd move to summer.
Okay. All right. So I can discard a card to build. I can discard a card to raid. What was the third item?
Play the card for the event on the card.
Okay. So I can't just sally these Corsairs out of Tripoli and engage the American frigate. Is that correct?
So there's 1 card that allows you to do that, and it's called Tripoli Attacks. And that card almost didn't make it into the game because that wasn't really historically the way Tripoli, they wanted to avoid combat for the most part. But, for the fun of it, there is 1 card. So if you had that card, yes, you could come out and attack me, but otherwise, no.
Okay. I'm going to play this card for the event. Morocco declares war, plays 3 Moroccan Corsairs in the harbor of Tangier.
All right.
So, okay.
All right.
And we'll put that over here.
Now that card is removed from the game. So that's in your discard.
Yeah, I think we figured it. We couldn't figure out how to do that in the module, so we're just dragging it to the removed cards panel.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that's actually how it's supposed to play.
Okay.
All right, and then
I don't draw additional cards until the next turn, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
All right, so I advanced us to the summer. I don't like what you did. I need to look at my cards. If I play that, then you'll do that. All right. Well, so for you to raid from Tangier, you actually need a specific card. It's Moroccan. So I'm worried about them, but I'm not super worried about them. Also, if you look at your Yusuf Karamanli card, he lets you raid with everybody who's on the board. So in theory, if you played that, you could raid from both Tangier and Tripoli.
Okay.
Although you tend to use that card when you have a few more Corsairs on the board. I'm going to play Swedish Frigates Arrive, and that's a card that's going to get removed from the game. And it's one of my core cards. So there we go. And I get to take my 2. Oop. How do I actually pick up those frigates? They're in the supply right now.
You should just be able to drag them, click and drag them out.
Okay.
So I assume those are the up at the top. There's a button called Pieces. Click on that, and then in there there'll be 2 tabs, one for USA and one for Tripolitania.
Got it. All right. There we go. I've placed 2 frigates, 2 Swedish frigates in the patrol zone. So now, if you were to go on a raid, I would get to roll 6 dice, 2 for the Americans and 4 for the Swedish, because there's 2 frigates there. So.
Okay, so we have to appease IKEA. Okay,
yes.
So it is now my turn, and I will play Moroccan Corsairs Raid. Raid with all Corsairs from the harbor of Tangier.
Yep. So that card is just put in your discard pile. It'll come back later.
Okay.
And I don't have any frigates there to shoot at you. So you can just roll 3 dice, and every 5 and 6 you get a gold.
Okay, so that is a big nothing.
That's nice.
My die rolling expertise continues as expected.
All right, so we're going to move to the fall, and I am going to play a card called didn't come out. Show of Force, and that goes in the discard pile. And I have to move 3 frigates to the harbor of Tangier. Well, to any of your harbors, but I'm moving to Tangier because that's where your guys are. And you guys just rethink this whole fighting with the Americans thing and are removed from the game. But I'm taking that frigate off station and these frigates off station, which was actually kind of bad. And then your frigates go away. And if you want to move, your Corsairs go away.
Stick them off to one side. I always like to stick pieces off to one side in Vassal, just so I can get to them easier next time.
Oh, sure. That makes sense.
And there's room to do that on this board.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so it's your turn. And actually, that might have been a dumb move on my part, because now you can play that Admiral Reyes Breaks Out card, and those 2 Corsairs can get to Tripoli with unimpeded, because I don't have any blockading the Gibraltar
Corsairs
Sea
from
Zone.
the harbor of Tripoli and the Corsairs from the harbor of each active ally.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Admiral Reyes Breaks Out was the card I meant.
You have the 2 Tripolitan Corsairs from the harbor of Gibraltar to the harbor of Tripoli. Okay, so we'll play that. And then I guess we remove that from the game. So let's take these guys and we go Tripoli.
Yep.
And then we'll drag this to remove from the game. Okay.
All right. I'm going to advance the turn to the winter. And there's my hand. I'm going to play Congress Authorizes Action, which plays 2 American frigates on the following year of the turn track. And then next year...
So let me show you a trick.
Yep.
You have 2 over here in Tangiers right now. Click on that, select that, and then hit Control C, and it will copy it. It will clone it. Clone it to the same thing.
Okay. Got it. All right. So now I'm getting 3 next year on the 1802, and I have 3 just hanging out, having drinks with the fine folks in Morocco. So it's your turn. Oh, and I'm sorry. Congress authorizes action gets removed from the game. So, all right, your turn.
All right, so I think we're going to build, and I'm building. So if I discard a card to build, do I have to show you the card that I'm discarding? First of all,
so in the basic rules, I say yes, and then if you're playing in a tournament situation, it's no. So I think because you're kind of helping see cards, and I can also say, oh, you might not want to do that if I think you're making a terrible mistake. But
maybe I don't want to get rid of that actually. All right, so we will. Discard this card, and we're going to build. Now, if we discard one card, what can we build?
You can build 1 Corsair in Tripoli. So instead of having 6, you would now have 7.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. So that's the end of 1801.
Okay.
So we go to spring of 1802. Oop. And I get those frigates. They come into Gibraltar. And then we draw 6 cards, but you have a hand limit of 8. So right now in my hand, I have 3. So I'm going to draw 6, meaning I'm going to need to get rid of 1.
Okay.
And I don't know if Vassal actually handles that very well.
So I'll have to get rid of... Same for me. So I'll have to get rid of 1 as well.
And then, yeah. So in your hand, I don't know if you noticed, you can only draw up to 8, it looks like. So this is not how you would play it if we were playing in person. So I'm just going to preemptively discard one of these cards to draw my 6th card.
Well, that was my question actually. We have to. What's the sequence? Do we discard down to 2 and draw 6, or do we draw 6 and then discard down to 8?
You draw 6 and then discard down to 8. But I don't think I was really clear with Joel about how that works. So that's on me. So, but it's important that you draw 6 because there's 24 cards in the deck. To draw 6 over 4 turns, then you have a reshuffle at the end of 1804. So.
Discard that. All right. So I think we're good. Or I'm good.
All right. So I'm going to take my play, and I'm going to play another naval movement card. There are 4 in the American deck, and I can move up to 4 American frigates. So I'm going to move 2, 3, 4. I'm missing 2 that were... Oh. All right. I'm sorry. I don't see how to detach those.
So they're stacked.
Yeah.
So you should just be able to it expands the stack if you double click on it.
Yep. All right. So I moved 4. So I put 2 in Tripoli's harbor in patrol zone, 1 outside of Tunis, 1 outside of Algiers. I know that Tangier is not going to come back in the war because I already had a stern talking to them with my 3 frigates in their harbor. So that's good for me. So.
Okay. All right.
You should go.
I am going to play Tunis declares war and place 3 Tunisian Corsairs in the harbor at Tunis.
Yeah.
And this is removed from the game.
All right. I am going to... I want to keep that. All right. I'm going to play this card for the event. It's Launch the Intrepid, and I roll 1 die. And a 1 and 2 is no effect. A 3 and 4, I sink one of your Tripolitan Corsairs, and 5 or 6, I sink 2.
Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and roll that dice. And I rolled a 1. So, great.
So,
So no effect.
all right.
So
It's almost like I rolled that die.
yeah, I get the feeling we're not exactly the best die rollers. So
All right, so I am going to play Yusuf Karamanli.
yep.
And I know you said usually you have more out on the board, but I don't know that I'm ever going to get more out on the board than this since you keep knocking them down. So we're just going to go ahead and do this.
All right.
Pirate Raid. So I'm going to roll one die for each.
Well,
well, you get to
not
intercept
yet.
first. Yeah.
Yep.
So
which harbor do you want to raid from first?
let's do Tripoli first.
Okay. So I have 4 frigates, so I get to roll 8 dice. So I'm just going to roll the 3, and then the 2, and we'll just see what I get.
Okay.
And I only hit on 6s. All right, there's 1 hit.
Okay.
All right, so I got 1 hit. So
Okay.
you knock 1 down, so you only have 6 Corsairs left.
Okay.
And then you get to
Decrease
roll,
that.
and every 5 or 6 you get a gold.
However, I am also going to play U.S. Signal Books Overboard, playable after any interception roll that includes an American frigate. Randomly draw 1 card from the American player's hand and place the card in the discard pile. In order to do that, since I don't know what the easiest way to do it would be, how many
Well,
cards
I have 6.
you have 6
I
in
have
your hand?
6. Why don't you just roll the, and
Exactly.
I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4,
So
5, 6. Yeah.
number 6.
All right, so this is the card. And
Okay. So we're removing Yusuf Karamanli from the game.
yep,
And we're removing U.S. Signal Books Overboard from the game.
yep.
And I'm going to roll 6 dice. And I'm
Yep.
looking for 5s or 6s or just 6s?
5s or 6s.
Okay. So that's a big no. That's 1 yes.
Wow, that's pretty bad.
No, that's average. Well, it's
No,
not
it's-
too
you
far
should
off
get
of
2.
average. Yeah,
Yeah.
I should have gotten 2 of them, but I always assume
all
I'm
right,
going
so-
to have half the luck. So,
All right, and then so go ahead and click your gold up by 1.
okay.
All right, now let's do Tunis. So I get to
Okay.
roll 2 dice because I just have the 1 frigate,
Mm-hmm.
and I got a 6, so I sank 1.
Okay, now what does the
So-
break off mean?
I don't. That was an old rule in the playtest rules that we eliminated, and I should actually ask Joel to remove that. So
Okay. All right, so I'm going to
So
roll
you-
2 dice,
Yep.
and I got 1.
So yep. So now you go to 2 gold.
Okay.
All right. Now we're in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
Are we in the fall? Oh yeah, we are in the fall.
Should be, yeah.
Yep. Yep. I made a mistake. I should have played another card there. That's okay. All right. So I'm going to. I want to keep that. I want to keep that. So I'm going to discard a card. To build a Corsair. I mean, excuse me, a gunboat. So I put 1 gunboat in Malta. And the way gunboats work is they can't patrol on their own because they're not really seaworthy like that. But if I attack in your harbor, or if I go bombard one of your cities, Dern or Benghazi, it comes along and it rolls 1 dice.
Okay.
And then it also can soak up hits in a combat. So,
Okay.
all right.
Okay. I will play the card Troops to Benghazi, playable if Hamet's army has not captured Benghazi, which it has not.
That's correct.
And I will add 2 troops to Benghazi, and this stays around.
Yes. And we might need a congressional inquiry about that. So now it's the winter. And I'm just going to discard another card to add a second. There we go. So now I have 2 gunboats there.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to play the Philadelphia Runs Aground, playable if there's at least 1 American frigate in the naval patrol zone of Tripoli, which there is, and I roll 1 die.
Yep.
And I got
And
a
you-
wah.
What'd you get?
1.
A 1? Oh man.
Oh,
What's
actually,
the
that's
effect?
good for me. Move an American frigate to the harbor of Malta.
Yeah, I mean that's not.
I mean, well, that's not nothing, but it's it's the worst result.
Yeah. All
All right, and
right,
then
so
this
that's
goes
the end of
away.
1802.
Okay.
So now we're going to be in the spring of 1803. That frigate comes into Gibraltar, and we draw 6 more cards. And once again, I have 3 in my hand, so I'm going to have to play it a little bit differently than normal. So
I have 4 in my. Oh no, I can draw 6.
I'm going to get rid of Assault on Tripoli because that's my that's one of the cards I can play to win the game.
Okay.
Either assault you in Tripoli or go to Dern, but or I mean do the peace treaty, but that I can't play those until 1805 anyways. So I trust I'll get that back in the reshuffle. All right, so I'm going to play. Oh, I never like playing this card, but I'm going to do it.
Mercenaries.
I'm going to play
And that.
Bainbridge Supplies Intel. And this allows me to go back in my deck and get any card and either put it in my hand or play it immediately. And I'm going to go back and get Show of Force, which allows me to move 3 frigates to any one of your allies and remove all the Corsairs.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I'm going to do. So I move 3 frigates there, and you remove your 2 Corsairs.
Okay. Okay. I am going to play Sweden Pays Tribute. Playable if it's 1803 or later, and there are Swedish frigates in the naval patrol zone of Tripoli. Return the Swedish frigates to supply, which I will pull them off and put them over here, and receive 2 gold coins.
Yeah. They're like, you're not doing your job, America. We're bugging out. So.
We've bought the IKEA bedroom set.
All right. So now we move to the summer. And just a side note. So I always bring the Swedes in, even though I know that card is in there for Tripoli, because I just don't have enough ships when the game starts early on. But some people in playtesting and still to this day are like, why do I want to give Tripoli 2 gold? Like, just stay away, Sweden. So, anyways, I have some. All right, I'm going to play Naval Movement. And I'm going to move 2, 3, 4 frigates. And it's a party outside Tripoli.
Okay. I'm going to play Storms. Select a naval patrol zone that contains at least 1 American unit. Roll 1 die for each American frigate. The first 6 rolled sinks a frigate. Each additional 6 rolls damages a frigate, and it's placed on the following year of the turn track. So you have 5 there, so I'm going to roll no 6s. So that didn't do any good.
But you only rolled 3. I thought you
no, I hit it twice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, see that there's a roll 2 and a roll 3.
Yeah. I just didn't have that much. I see.
So
boy, I want to gamble against you sometime because your cards are. This is awesome. All right, so
I can only assume I'm paying off bad karma at a vastly accelerated rate.
All right, so it's the fall now, and it's rare that America has so little to do at this point. All right, I'm going to play Naval Movement again, because, I have another one. I think it's the last one I have in hand. And I'm going to move 1 frigate to Alexandria, and I'll tell you why I'm doing that in a second. And then I'm going to bring 1 frigate to Dern, and he's going to bring along 2 gunboats. Whoa, they just disappeared.
No explanation for that.
Yeah.
There you go. You can hit a.
Here.
There's an undo button on the top bar.
Oh, okay.
Maximum number of U.S. gunboats already in play.
Yeah. Here's my 2.
Okay.
There's supposed to be 3 available, but wow, every time I bring them down to Dern, they just disappear. Huh.
Weird.
All right. Well, there's 2 gunboats there.
Okay.
So I get to roll 2 dice with my frigate and 1 with each of my gunboats. So that's 4 dice. So I'm just going to roll the 2s twice, and each 6 emulates one of your infantry.
We will answer some chat questions in a little bit here. Maybe at the end of the year. We'll circle back. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. John Longshore, Patrick Pictures, thanks for stopping by. The very esteemed Mr. David Thompson is in. How's it going? From all of 60 miles away that he is. And we will get to questions shortly. So, all right. So it's my go. I think. Yeah, I think we're gonna sally forth and raid from Tripoli. Actually,
that's a good call.
So go ahead and roll your dice.
All right. So I get to roll 8, 3. Oh my goodness!
Wow.
6s.
Okay.
All right. Let's roll 3 more. That's a 4th. All right. So I just think that's absurd.
Okay. You just sank half the pirate fleet here.
Yeah, but you do get to roll 2 dice.
Well, actually, I am rolling more than
5
because I'm playing Happy Hunting, which gives me 3 additional dice. So I get total of 5 dice, and I got 2 out of that. So let's add 2, and Merchant Ship Converted, playable if a Tripolitan piece. Raid has just been successful. Place 1 Tripolitan Corsair in the harbor at Tripoli. So we will increase this back by 1. And then this goes out of the game, and this goes out of the game.
All right. That was a good turn for you. All right, so now it's the winter turn. And
I needed to discard a card to raid, so let me throw that away.
I'm going to discard tribute paid because we will never pay tribute. And I'm going to discard that to move 2 frigates. And I'm going to move 1 from Malta. And remember, I have 2 gunboats.
Give me
that just
1
mysteriously
second.
Disappeared. Okay.
Sorry about that. I had to prevent the cat from knocking the jar of treats off the shelf and making a giant mess.
Yes, that would have been a disaster.
It would have been.
So,
and there would have been profanity on this otherwise family-friendly stream.
All right, so I moved 1 frigate, and then I'm going to take 1 frigate from my patrolling Tripoli over there. And then remember, I just have 2 gunboats that are invisible gunboats, stealth gunboats. So I'm rolling 6, 2 hits, 3 hits. So I just wiped out all the infantry in Dern.
Okay.
Yeah. And then these guys go back to Malta. Now, I don't capture Dern. You still have some very minimal garrison there.
Okay.
But if I roll in there with my army next turn, then there's just not even a combat. So
okay. All right. So we are going to play troops to Tripoli, place 2 Tripolitan infantry in the city of Tripoli.
Yep. Packing it in on defense.
That'll go
it's
there.
Not a bad idea.
And that is the end of 1803.
Yep. Did you want to take a quick break and answer questions?
Yeah,
or do you
let's
want to keep going?
take a look. So we got a couple. Let's see here.
Can I see them anywhere, or should I just listen?
You'd have to. I'll just read them off.
Okay, that's fine.
So David Thompson's asking whether Shores of Tripoli and the forthcoming Halls of Montezuma share some design or gameplay DNA, which is a great question.
They absolutely do. Now, I do have a co-designer on the Halls of Montezuma, and I would say it plays about 15 minutes longer, and let me explain why. So both games use the 27 card decks with 3 core cards and then 24 drawn cards, some which are removed from the game, some which are battle cards that are played. So that is exactly the same. But there's an additional phase that each player has in the Halls of Montezuma. The American player has a legislative deck, and there are 7 different pieces of legislation, 5 of which passed, to the Wilmot Proviso and the annexation of Yucatan, which did not pass. And there's a turn where the American player can either put those cards into Congress, try to lobby for them, or try to pass them. And that's part of what the U.S. player has to do. The U.S. player is really the Polk administration trying to manage their domestic and foreign policy while also prosecuting this war. The Mexican player also has a guerrilla phase where, depending on the size of their guerrilla forces, they can harass the American lines once they've crossed south of the Rio Grande River. The American player has to win, has a similar type of winning condition in that they need to have the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo passed by Congress. And to do that, they have to have captured Mexico City, and they have to have at least 8 of the 10 victory points possible. 6 are territorial ambition, 3 are legislation passed, and 1 is having an adequate blockade. The reason why it's sometimes hard to pass laws is that, or treaties, is that although as you capture territory, your popularity goes up, as you lose troops, in particular volunteer troops, your popularity goes down. The Mexican player is actually playing not only the Mexican military, but the anti-war movement in the United States. So Frederick Douglass, Abraham Lincoln, the Transcendentalists, the abolitionists, everyone who's opposed to the war can try to chip away at the support for the war. And if the support ever goes to 0, then the United States quits the war and Mexico wins. Mexico can also win by capturing Texas, which I'll be honest, probably won't happen very often. But if an American player is sleeping, that can happen. Or if by the end of 1848, the American player hasn't won, Mexico wins because Polk is out of office. And so, a peace candidate, essentially a Whig, comes in, and that's not the victory that Polk had.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, that was a really long-winded explanation.
Oh, that's
I apologize.
No,
but I'm really excited about it because I just started sending out playtest kits to folks. So yeah, I'm really jazzed about the design.
And for clarity, Patchwork Pictures has asked, this is the forthcoming game from Fort Circle, intended to be a companion game to this, not the GMT game on the Mexican War.
It has almost no similarities to the 2009 title that GMT released. And I get that a lot, and I'm ever so slightly defensive about this because we actually cleared using the title with the Marine Corps Trademark Office. We're like, I want to make sure this is good with them, and they're great with it. And then, the fact that there's been other games with the same title, I'm like, they're wildly different games.
Well,
so I don't think there'll be any confusion in the marketplace.
Well, yeah, and I'm guessing if you can say that you actually got the blessing of the Marine Corps to do this, what am I going to say? I mean, you laugh that off very easily.
Yeah, and we're actually, some fine gentlemen down in Quantico, as well as out at the Naval Academy, are playtesting Halls of Montezuma with that for us as well. So that's a relationship that we started with Tripoli and now continues with Montezuma. So I feel really good about its pedigree.
Great. All right, so we're halfway through. So let's talk about victory conditions. What do both sides need to do to win?
So I can win in one of 2 ways. I can play the historical treaty of peace and amity, but to play that, I need to meet certain conditions. I have to have captured Dern, which obviously I haven't done yet because my army can't even be built till 1804, which is going to happen. You can have no frigates, and you'll notice you actually have a card, Constantinople sends aid. As soon as I take Dern, you can get a frigate, so you're not out of the fight yet. And I'll have a discussion at the end about why I think that card might be a little overpowered. And then also, none of your allies can be active. Now, I've already knocked out Tunis and I've already knocked out Tangier, but Algiers is still in your deck. They can still declare war. You probably want to strategically hold that to play that when I can't win. And then the fourth situation is it has to be the fall of 1805 or later. So that way you have 18 turns to try to achieve your winning conditions.
Okay.
And you have one of three different conditions. If you sink 4 American frigates, you win. But you had bad luck on storms and bad luck on the Philadelphia runs aground. So that's probably not going to happen. If you get to 12 gold, which is the most likely, the most usual way that Tripoli wins, then that's you win. Or if my army gets wiped out. And the fact that you're packing troops in Tripoli is certainly of concern to me. So, although at least your fleet's been whittled down some. So you win either by an economic victory by getting 12 gold, or by a military victory by either sinking frigates or wiping out my army. And the notion is that the cost in blood and or treasure is just too high. So America gives up and says, fine, we'll pay tribute.
Okay.
So.
Okay. All right. So I guess we're at the drawing cards stage.
Yep. And I get my last frigate. It's 1804. It's the Spring. And I'm going to have to discard that. So you should have all of your cards in hand now.
Okay.
So there should be none left in your draw pile. And because I need to have Joel make a few edits to the Vassal module, you probably need spots for 10 cards in your hand and then discarding down.
Yeah, and there are 10 spots on the list here.
And Joel did a great job. Please understand.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
in no way being critical. It's my fault for not having went back and beat it up a little bit. I used to do a lot of QA work for my own company when my engineers would build stuff, and I just didn't do that with this, and that's my fault.
Oh, good. All right, so you have
your... Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm going to build Hammett's Army. Hammett's Army created.
Okay.
Playable if it's the spring of 1804 or later, which it is. If there's an American frigate in the harbor of Alexandria, which there is. And I placed 1 Marine and 5 Arab infantry units in the city of Alexandria. So
okay,
that card is removed. And 1 Marine and 2, 3, 4. Oops, I just decreased. Increase. All right, so I have a total of 6. It's 1 Marine and 5.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Play.
I'm going to play troops to Dern to place 2 Tripolitan infantry in Dern. We'll go in the discard pile.
All right, so we'll move it to the summer. So I am going to play General Eaton attacks Dern. Move Hammett's army from Alexandria to Dern. Move up to 3 American frigates to the harbor of Dern. Resolve the Battle of Dern. And this card will be removed. So I'm going to move this frigate from Alexandria and 2 from Malta. My Marine. And those guys. And I'm actually going to play a battle card. I'm going to play Lieutenant O'Bannon leads the charge. And so my Marine rolls 3 dice instead of 1 dice.
Okay.
Which is a little overkill, but I he should be played at Dern because that's where he made his name. So, so I'm going to So I get to bombard once with my frigates and those 2 gunboats that are invisible. So I get to roll 8 dice, and every 6 is going to wipe out one of your infantry. So 1 hit, 2 hits. All right, well, that was really anticlimactic.
Well, that's that.
So they bombarded you before the land battle even happened. So I've now captured Dern. And now, let's say you had a guy who had remained, the frigates still leave, and then we would shoot simultaneously at each other. So,
okay.
And we'd pull, but that didn't happen there. But if I attack Benghazi, we can do that. So,
okay. Okay, I am going to play Constantinople Sends Aid to place 1 Tripolitan frigate.
Yep.
And 2 Corsairs in the harbor at Tripoli. And that goes out of the game.
You also get 2 infantry as well in Tripoli.
Ooh, cool.
So.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So you have how many Corsairs? 5?
There's 5 now, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I know that you have Algiers declares war in your hand, and I haven't been paying attention to your discards, and I'm not going to go look at them. So you might have an Algiers raids or 2. Unfortunately, I'm out of naval movement cards, so I could discard a card to move 2 frigates, or what I'm going to do is I'm going to play Thomas Jefferson, and I can move 8 frigates. So that's my big gun card, like your Yusuf Karamanli card.
Okay.
So Jefferson, and I can move all of my frigates. So I'm going to put 2 outside of Algiers, and then I'm going to have 6 outside of Tripoli. And that was the fall turn. That was my fall turn. So it's your play.
Okay, I'll play U.S. supplies run low to move 1 American frigate from the patrol zone in Tripoli to the patrol zone or harbor at Malta.
Yeah. They're probably running low on rum.
In the fine British naval tradition.
Indeed. Rum and the lash. All right.
Oh, let's not forget the buggery.
I was going to skip that because this is a family channel.
Oh, it's okay.
So I'm going to play Constantinople Demands Tribute, since they did just send you a nice shiny frigate and some other troops.
Mm-hmm.
They want 2 gold. So you're going to have to kick back 2 gold.
Okay. Okay, so we are going to play Tunisian Corsairs raid to raid. No, never mind. We're going to discard that.
Yeah.
Because that's of no use now to raid from Tripoli.
Right. So I have 5 frigates, and I'm going to roll 10 dice. 1 hit. Only 1 hit. So
okay.
You go down to 4, and then your 4 guys roll.
Okay, so the frigate does not raid, correct?
Yes, correct. The frigate.
Okay.
If you had the Tripoli attacks card, he could come out to attack.
Okay.
Or if I come in to attack you, but they're not really raiding this vessel.
I got nothing.
Are you serious?
Got nothing.
Man, this is. Yeah, I mean, if you had been rolling average, you'd be about at 8 or 9 gold right now, and this would
something
be
like that. That's within striking.
Match.
Just that's 1 good raid away from 12, right? So
So this has been a pretty boring game, and I apologize.
Well, I actually am finding it relatively interesting, but I'll save the commentary till the end.
Oh, sure.
So
I will say one thing I want to say is that I designed the game so, like, if a game is just a 50-50 flip, right? Like a better player will win half the time. But if you play Twilight Struggle, the better player is going to win 99% of the time.
Yes, correct.
And I wanted the game to have enough luck in it that the better player should win 90% of the time. But teaching someone new, they're going to have a chance to play. And whereas if I taught someone who hadn't played Twilight Struggle, they'd get blown out just because I've played it 1,000 times. So, anyways.
And it's about, and this is no less true. I mean, I've observed the same thing. It's about people say when talking about Twilight Struggle specifically that it's all about your knowledge of the deck, which is true, but it's probably more accurate to, and I'm not sure I'm phrasing this in an intelligent way necessarily, but it's more about understanding the game flow. And that's no less different than playing OCS, for example, right? If you understand what the terrain, I mean, I will play. I'm a pretty good player at Baltic Gap, for example, because I've played it 4 times, and it's a big project game, right? It's a small project as OCS games go, but because I'm familiar with the terrain, I know where the supply lines need to go. I know the lay of the land. I know what's coming. Oh, I know the Germans are going to get big reinforcements by this particular date, and I know the Soviets are going to need to have accomplished this, and that, but by this particular date. So it's really just game experience, right?
Yep.
It's just that in Twilight Struggle, it's the deck, because that's what the whole game runs on. But
yep. And I would say in the Shores of Tripoli, the American player has a little bit more of a hurdle, right? Like, you need to know, even if you draw a troop move, attack Dern in 1801, save that card, because you want to be doing that in 1804. You don't want to discard it and then not get it until 1806, and then you're pressed for like, there's certain things that it's just, you need to know to play America. Whereas playing as Tripoli, it's just like, you probably should have rated a little bit more early on, I think, when I didn't have as many frigates. But then when I started
clearly,
sixes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, all right. So I don't know how to do I don't know how to do what we need to do next. I don't know how to do it. Is we need to reshuffle our decks.
Okay, right-click on your discard pile and select Reshuffle Deck.
Oh, that was pretty easy. All right. So
but it seems
now that
to
it's
have
spring
put
of
those,
1805.
It seems to have put them in.
Mine worked fine.
It worked fine, but they ended up face up for me. So.
Oh. Well, there's only 3 more turns in the game, so do whatever you need to do, but
Nope, we're good.
Okay. Now, this is a little weird. I have 5 cards in my hand, and I would draw 6, so I'd have 11, and then discard 3. But because of the limitations of how the parameters are on this, it's going to be a little weird.
Okay.
So.
All right, so I'm going to draw 5. Get rid of this one. Draw 6. And then I need to discard 2.
All right. I'm good. So I'm aiming to, if you watch my discards, I got rid of my invades Tripoli, because frankly, invading Tripoli is a huge hassle for me. I got to go through those troops in Benghazi. I got to go through then your fleet and troops in Tripoli. And while it's more fun to win that way as the Americans, and in fact, I had a little problem during playtesting, is that Americans would just never go for the treaty. They're like, I want to go take Tripoli. And so it kind of skewed how our testing went, and I had to, kind of say, hey, all right, for this game, you got to try to win by treaty just to see that it would work. So, but I'm going to try to win by treaty here. So,
I still need to discard 1 card, and I'm thinking heavily about it.
Oh, okay. Sorry to.
So no, it's all good. All right, we'll get rid of that. All right, so now we're good.
All right. So I know that you have Algiers declares war in your hand. I know that I want to win on the fall of 1805 by playing the treaty card. So I need to hedge against that Algiers declares war card, and I got to get rid of that frigate that you have, because I can't play my peace treaty card if you have that frigate. So I'm going to play Burn the Philadelphia, and I'm going to play a battle card with it, the Daring Stephen Decatur. So, I don't know if actually did the Daring Stephen didn't come out. Well, I'll bring it out in a second. So, Burn the Philadelphia. Oh, there. I'll do it like this. So, Burn the Philadelphia, roll a die. A 1 to 2 is no effect. A 3 to 4, the frigate's damaged and it goes over on the turn track, and you'll get it back in 1806. But I won't care in 1805 for my treaty. And then a 5 or a 6, it's sunk. And with the Daring Stephen Decatur, I get to roll 2 dice and choose which roll I want. So I really need one of these 2 dice to be a 3 or higher. All right, I'm going to roll. 3. So the frigate is damaged, and it goes onto the turn track. And just like I get the frigates coming back into Gibraltar, you'll get that back into Tripoli if the game lasts until 1806. But, obviously my goal is to make sure that doesn't happen.
Okay. I'm going to decide, because why not? We're going to play Tripoli attacks, move all Tripolitan frigates and corsairs from the harbor. I was probably going to do this regardless, to the naval patrol zone, and resolve the battle against the American frigates in the patrol zones.
All right, you get 4 dice. However. I
also have the guns of Tripoli, which gives me 12 extra dice.
So
it's not in the harbor, though, is it?
It's that. See, you're out in the patrol zone. Yeah. That's a card when I come in to attack, you can play.
Okay.
So this is a 4 on 10. If you want to rethink.
Okay, yeah. Let's not do that. That's dumb then. I'd be better.
It'd be exciting. Okay.
All right. So let me throw this back in my hand and play Tripoli acquires corsairs to give me 2 extra corsairs.
Yep.
Yeah.
So now you're at 6. It's my go. So. I'm going to play naval movement. Sorry. Naval movement. And I'm going to use that to just move 1 frigate here. And that's all I'm going to do. And this is the summer turn.
All right, so we'll play Algiers declares war to place our 3 Algerian frigates in Algiers.
So it's now the fall. And I can't play my treaty card because you have those guys there. But I'm going to play a show of force because that's a card that doesn't get removed. And I move 3 frigates into the harbor. And all corsairs from the harbor are returned to the supply.
Okay. I see no reason not to raid with the corsairs in Algiers.
Yep.
So let's.
Oh no! I just removed them. They're gone.
Oh, they're gone? No.
Yep.
All right. So never mind.
Might as well raid from Tripoli, unless you got some great card over there.
Nope.
I don't remember.
Really. No. Yeah, storms.
Oh,
Let's
yeah.
roll
That's a good
in
card.
the patrol zone in Tripoli. So we're going to roll 5 dice.
Yep.
And looks like we do sink 1.
All right. So I'll take it off the board. Now, if you're playing with the physical deck or physical, is you would keep those as a prize next to your gold, right? You'd be like, I'm sitting on 10 gold and I got 3 American frigates.
Okay.
Like, I'm the man. But
well, I've rolled something like 11 dice on storms and gotten 1 hit. So
yeah. Well, now the original storms card was as many 6s as you got, sank, and that just made the game too swing. That was just like that wasn't reasonable. So now you can play storms twice because it comes through the reshuffle, and you can play the Philadelphia runs aground. And if you have decent dice rolling on those, you have a chance to sink 3 by card play, but then you'd still need to sink a 4th in combat. And that's what's nice about having either that Tripoli attacks, or if when I come in to attack Tripoli, if you sink a 4th, then I'm done. But now I'm going to play the Treaty of Peace and Amity. And because it is the fall of 1805 or later, it's actually the winter, all the cities are devoid of corsairs, all of your allies. I've captured Dern, and you have no frigates.
Okay.
So the game ends.
Okay.
I will be honest, you had really terrible luck, and that made the game sort of boring towards the end, because you have the advantage in the beginning, and you need to get at least to 6 or 8 gold early on, and then my forces start to overwhelm you, and then you're just trying to get that 12th gold somewhere, or if you've had good luck sinking frigates, then I'm a little stretched, and maybe you can get that 4th frigate somehow.
Right.
But you got knocked down in gold, and so that made it less exciting. So I'm a little disappointed. I wanted to see more exciting games, so everyone wants to buy the game. But that was just bad die rolling, and that happens.
Well, that happens to me a great deal.
Yeah, I mean, it was well played, so I want to be very clear about that, but it was not well rolled.
So, well, it happens. All right, so I feel like this is quite interesting. I mean, so your target playtime is in the neighborhood of an hour, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you know the cards, if you don't know the cards when you're sitting down to play it, you're looking at 60 to 70 minutes. If you're an experienced player, like, you're blowing through it in 35, 40 minutes. So, and now this game, we took an hour, but we're using an interface that's a little bit, awkward, at least for me, because I'm not used to it. And there was also no invasion attack on Tripoli, and that's a big dice fest if that's the way the game goes.
Okay.
Because you're rolling guns at Tripoli, plus you've got some Corsairs in there, and I have a couple cards, and I'm bringing every frigate and every gunboat I got, and there's a big shoot 'em up, and that's to the death, and so that can take several rounds of rolling, and then if I make it through that, then I send in my ground troops. So
right. Yeah, I like it. So I know that you have a companion game, as we've discussed already, the Halls of Montezuma in the works. And I know that Fort Circle has a couple other projects in the pipeline as well, one of which is a suffrage game, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yep. So Votes for Women is designed by Tori Brown. She was my college debate partner, many years ago, and I'll leave it at that. And it is... So it starts in 1848 with the Seneca Falls Convention, which was attended by mostly women, but Frederick Douglass was there. Actually, there are a good number of men as well. And it kicks off from that point, and it goes until 1920. And so, somewhat similar to Tripoli, it's played over 6 turns, although those turns encompass much longer periods of time. But cards aren't removed from the game. Like, they're just you go through the deck and you play. So there's a little bit less of that, and there's a little bit more. There's flavor text on those cards, and the players can play an event play a card for its event. They can discard a card to organize, and I'll explain that in a second, or they can discard a card to campaign. And when they campaign, each campaigner they have rolls a 4-sided die to put influence into a state. It's unlike a game like 1960 where it's even, you're just trying to win more electoral votes. In this, the suffragists need to win 36 states for the 19th Amendment to be enacted, whereas the anti-suffragists only need 13 states, because then suffragists can't get to 36 because there's only 48 states at the time.
Okay.
So the suffragist has more powerful cards, but also has more work to do in the game. It's a little, it uses, unlike, I'm using 1960 because I think that's what people probably think most of as its similarity. But whereas 1960, the cards have ops value, in Votes for Women, you're rolling 4-sided die for each of your campaigners, and then there are also event cards, kind of like the Philadelphia card here, where a player rolls a die to see if a particular piece of legislation passes. Or Jeanette Rankin was the first congresswoman from Montana. Well, if she gets elected, you get a bunch of bonuses, but you have to roll the die to see if she wins her election. And where the campaigning buttons come in, and they're really awesome looking buttons that are from the period, is that you can spend them to re-roll. But there's always that dilemma of, well, do I spend one of my precious campaign buttons or organizing buttons to re-roll a so-so die roll. And in some of the play tests that Tori and I have had have been really like, it's really tight about like, am I going to waste a turn then to get more of these organizing buttons? And that's sort of the trade-off that happens in real social movements, right? Do we do more organization that then we have a stronger platform, but that's time we're not out campaigning. And so it's trying to, not mimic isn't the right word I'm using, but model that sort of dynamic that occurs. And then the suffrage player, there were a number of movements going on in the time. There was the abolitionist movement before the Civil War. There was the temperance movement, which really doesn't really pick up steam until after the Civil War. And then there's the suffrage movement, and they all intersect, but at times also diverge. And so that interplay within a broader, you'd say a broader progressive social movement, but yet there's discord between them, plays out in the game. And that's really a tool that the anti-suffragist player can use by playing cards that are events and that type of thing.
Okay.
Is that adequate?
Yeah, that's tons of information. That is it's an interesting topic historically, and I don't know much about it, and I was interested because it is a topic I wouldn't mind knowing more about, and I find that games are a great vehicle for me to do that. I mean, that's how I get into Civil War stuff, right? I was not at all interested in Civil War stuff, and then I played it for the people, and now I'm Mr. Civil War. So
nice.
So yeah, this is very interesting. Are there any other games on the Barbary Wars that you're aware of? Because I'm not aware of any, which doesn't mean there aren't, but I'm not aware of them.
WizKids, I think, had like little stand-up ships, and they had like a Barbary Coast ship, but that's not. I mean,
yeah, I don't think that counts.
And then there was some like Axis and Allies style game that someone printed rules for, but I think it has like a 4 rating on BGG and from 5 users. Something like there's not really a game on this that I've ever seen.
Okay,
so.
Yeah, me neither. And it's another one of those topics of historical interest, but that wargaming, possibly because it seems to be a deeply asymmetrical contest. And probably wargaming designers have had trouble envisioning a solution to simulate this. And I think this is doing a very interesting job.
And thank you. I think another problem is that, this is a short game, and I designed it that way because, I wanted a game that was playable in less than an hour. And I don't think that's really where war game designers have been traditionally. So I can see why the conflict wouldn't really hold a lot of interest, right? I mean, it's at most the Americans had a fleet of, a couple frigates and a couple schooners and a couple of sloops, and big deal, right? That's not really kind of a grand scale the way
I want a 10-map front War in Europe-sized treatment of this topic from you at some point.
And that would probably be on individual man scale.
Yes,
we could probably take some Barzo sets.
You could at least do it as an individual. You would have to do it on a man-to-man scale. Each individual dinghy has its own counter.
Yeah. So, but it's fascinating history, right? I think it's really fundamentally, it's very important to the Marines. My goodness, and also the Navy. So one of my cards is Preble, who was the Commodore for part of the war. They switched out a couple times. A lot of the officers who served under him then went on to they were the heroes in the War of 1812. And so one of the halls at the Naval Academy is Preble Hall, named after that Preble, who was who was the one who did the most good while he was over there. So, this is really important to at least part of our military. So, they've really embraced it, and I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, that's great.
Because otherwise, I'm gonna have a bunch of unsold games, and I don't want that. So.
or angry Marines.
Yes, they have,
also
they
undesirable.
Have been very positive. So yes.
All right, great. I would like to. I'd like you to stick around after we're done here, Kevin, for a
Sure.
couple minutes. But I would like to thank everybody for watching. If anybody has any last minute questions, Finn, nice to see you here as well. It wouldn't have surprised me if there was a S&T game over the 50-year history of S&T on a subject, but I don't remember one. That doesn't mean much since I'm not all that familiar
Oh,
with.
I'm sorry. Decision Games has announced that they have a game coming out called The Shores of Tripoli. So,
Really?
yes, I think it's coming out in 2022.
Okay.
So, there is a game coming out. So, it's
Well,
obviously
you
a hot
beat them to
topic
it,
now.
so.
Yes. So,
So, all right, great. In that case, like I said, if anybody's got any last minute questions, slip them in really fast. Otherwise, we're going to call it. We're going to try and have Kevin back on in the future for this and or other projects. If anyone is watching this after the fact, thank you for doing so. Please subscribe to the channel. And everybody have a great night. Happy wargaming. Okay, we're off.